So let's dive right in. A recent analysis from the MEDA Foundation asks a question that sounds simple, but is actually incredibly deep. Who really needs innovation in India?
I mean, is it just a nice to have, a luxury for those flashy startups in Bangalore or the big multinational corporations? Or could it be something much, much more fundamental? Something that's actually about national survival? Let's unpack that. For decades, India's economic story was built on a pretty straightforward idea: labor arbitrage. Basically, we could provide services and manpower more cheaply than a lot of other places. But that engine, well, it's starting to sputter. The future isn't going to be won by being the cheapest anymore. It's going to be won by being the smartest, by creating real value from knowledge. Okay, so let's start with the highest possible stakes. Is innovation really a question of survival for a country like India? The argument here is yes, absolutely. At this point in its journey, it is completely non-negotiable. So, why all the urgency? Well, it's because of this perfect storm of three huge pressures all hitting at once. First, there's the risk of getting stuck in what's called the middle income trap. Then you've got automation, which is threatening to make that whole cheap labor advantage obsolete. And finally, there's the very real strategic danger of depending on other countries for critical technology. Let's look a little closer at this middle income trap idea. Think of it like economic quicksand. A country's wages start to rise, which is great for the people. But if its industries don't get more innovative at the same time, it gets stuck. All of a sudden, it's too expensive to compete with low-cost countries, but it's not advanced enough to compete with the high-tech economies. And growth just flatlines. So you see, the goal here isn't just to copy-paste another Silicon Valley. It's something way more fundamental. It's about building the muscle, the resilience, to control your own destiny in a world that's getting more and more unpredictable. In short, it really is about survival. So if it's about survival for the nation, what does innovation actually look like for the people driving the economy? For the entrepreneurs and that massive, massive network of micro, small, and medium businesses, the MSMEs.
Peter Thiel really nailed it for startups. If you just build something that anyone can easily copy, you're basically just inviting everyone into a price war. A war you'll probably lose. The real, lasting value? That comes from creating something that's truly unique, something that no one else has.
And that's exactly where intellectual property, or IP, comes into play. Patents, copyrights, your secret sauce tech. These are not just boring legal papers. They're actual bankable assets. They are the moat around your castle that stops competitors from just strolling in and taking over. Without that moat, you're pretty much just doing free market research for your rival. But for the millions of small businesses out there, the MSMEs, innovation looks really different. It's not about inventing the next global app. No, it's about small but absolutely crucial steps. Things like making a process a little more efficient, improving a product's design, or building a brand that helps you stand out so you're not just competing on price. So for this huge, incredibly important part of the economy, innovation isn't about that flashy word, disruption. It's about durability. It's about building a business that can weather the storms, that can compete on more than just price, and that can ultimately create stable, lasting jobs. All right, so we've talked about the nation and about businesses, but what about innovation for the people themselves? How does it directly solve the unique, on-the-ground challenges that hundreds of millions of people in India face every single day? This leads us to a concept that many see as a core Indian superpower: frugal innovation. It's the art of creating really powerful solutions, even when you have tough constraints. The whole goal is to slash the cost and complexity, but without sacrificing the result. It's all about making technology work for everyone, not just the people who can afford it. And this isn't just some theory. We're talking about real solutions to critical grassroots problems. Things like a low-cost medical device that can be used in a remote village, a simple water filter that actually works, a tool that helps a small farmer get a bigger yield, or a better way to stop food from rotting before it can even get to the market. And right here, we see a really powerful difference. You see, charity can be a lifeline, for sure, but sometimes it can create dependence. Innovation is different. It gives people the tools for productivity. It empowers them to build their own futures. And that creates sovereignty, not just for the nation, but for the individual too. Okay, let's zoom back out to that big national picture, because securing India's future today means something totally different than it did 50 years ago. Technological independence, it's not just an economic goal anymore. It is the new national security. In the 21st century, a nation's true independence, its real strength, is measured by its capabilities in these critical areas. I mean, if you have to rely on other countries for your defense technology, for your semiconductors, or for how you store energy, that is a massive strategic vulnerability. Building your own capability here is simply non-negotiable. Let's just pick one of those, semiconductors. These tiny little chips, they are literally the nervous system of the modern world. They power everything from your phone to missile defense systems. If you can't make them, or at least secure your own supply, you are fundamentally at the mercy of global politics. Period. Okay, so the stakes are crystal clear. But how does India actually pull this off? Well, the path forward seems to be about two things: building the right kind of talent pipeline and being willing to face some pretty hard truths. And this brings up a really pointed question. India has this incredible demographic advantage, right? Millions of young graduates flooding into the workforce every year. But are we producing people with degrees, or are we producing genuine innovators and problem solvers? There's a big difference. And that leads to some uncomfortable truths about how things are done. For example, just throwing money at startups without providing real mentorship, that's just a subsidy for failure. Getting a patent that never turns into a real product, that's just a dead asset. And big, grand national policies will always fall flat if the local institutions can't actually deliver. The key takeaway: we've got to shift the focus from just sheer quantity to real, meaningful quality. And this means the entire foundation of the education system needs a major pivot. The goal can't just be about memorizing facts for an exam. It has to be about nurturing curiosity, critical thinking, and the actual real-world ability to solve tough problems. Because at the end of the day, the metric that truly counts isn't the billion-dollar startup valuations or the flashy media headlines. The real measure of success, the true test, is the tangible impact on human lives. It's about uplifting people, restoring dignity, and making communities stronger. Which leaves us with this one final thought. Innovation isn't just another economic strategy or a policy choice. It's the active, deliberate, and sometimes difficult process of actually building a country's future. And for India, that future won't simply be inherited, it absolutely has to be invented.